Mina Vale swayed under the strobe lights, her body moving with practiced grace, though her heart wasn't in it anymore. The music thundered through her bones, the crowd's eyes burned on her skin, but her mind was far away, in a hospital room that reeked of antiseptic and hopelessness. Her brother was dying, and she was running out of time. When her shift ended, she changed out of sequins and into a hoodie, her reflection in the mirror almost unrecognizable. Hollow eyes, trembling hands, a soul slowly fading behind painted lashes. That was when she saw her, an older woman, elegant, composed, completely out of place in the chaos of the backstage dressing room. She wore pearls and a look of quiet calculation, her tailored coat untouched by the sweat and smoke. "Mina Vale?" the woman asked, her voice smooth and deliberate. "I've been watching you." Mina froze, halfway through pulling her hair into a bun. "If you're here for a private show, you'll have to talk to the manager." "I don't do. I'm not here for that." The woman smiled faintly. "I'm here with an offer. One that could change your life." Those words, change your life, were dangerous. She'd heard them before, from men who offered lies wrapped in promises. But something in this woman's tone was different. Cold. Businesslike. "What kind of offer?" Mina asked warily. The woman stepped closer, her perfume sharp and expensive. "My name is Madame Liu," she said. "And I need you to do something for me. Something only someone like you can do." Mina frowned. "Someone like me?" "A woman who knows how to tempt." Her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "My son has been living in a monastery for 3 years. He refuses to return to the company he built, refuses marriage, refuses life itself. They say he wants to become a monk." Mina blinked. "And that's a problem because?" "Because he is my only son," Madame Liu said sharply, her voice laced with venom. "And I didn't spend a lifetime building an empire just for it to die in the hands of priests." The woman's gaze turned calculating, predatory. "If he can go 1 more year without breaking his vow, he'll be ordained as a Buddhist monk. I cannot let that happen." "So you want what?" Mina's stomach twisted as realization began to dawn. "You want me to tempt him," Madame Liu finished calmly. "Seduce him. Make him question his path. And when he falls, you walk away. I'll make sure you're compensated enough to buy your brother every treatment he needs." The room fell silent, broken only by the hum of flickering neon lights. Mina stared at her, torn between disgust and temptation. She'd done many things to survive. But this? "I'm not a con artist," she said finally, her voice trembling. Madame Liu tilted her head, eyes cold as glass. "You're not a saint either. You dance for men every night. Why not dance for a cause this time?" Mina flinched. Her brother's face flashed in her mind, pale, frail, still trying to smile even as pain ravaged his body. The hospital bills stacked higher every week. "How much?" she whispered. The woman didn't hesitate. She slid an envelope across the vanity table. "Half now. Half when he returns home. And if you succeed completely." Her lips curved into a cruel smile. "I'll make sure you never have to dance again." Mina's fingers brushed the thick envelope. It was heavy. She didn't have to open it to know it was enough to save a life. And destroy her own. Her voice came out small. "What's his name?" "Tenzin Liu." Mina froze. The name sounded strange on her tongue. Quiet, spiritual, almost sacred. The kind of name that didn't belong in a place like this. Madame Liu stood, satisfied. "You leave tomorrow morning. The monastery is in the mountains, outside Busan. They're looking for volunteers to help in their library. I've arranged everything." Mina stared at the mirror, at her reflection flickering under the dying lights. The girl who looked back wasn't the same one who walked into this club. She was about to walk into something darker. "I'll do it," she said finally, but her voice trembled, even as she forced a smile. "Tell your son," she whispered, "his peace is about to be tested." Madame Liu's eyes gleamed. "Good girl." And with that, she turned and disappeared into the night, leaving Mina staring at her reflection, holding an envelope heavy enough to crush her heart. The monastery bells tolled before dawn, slow and solemn, each note rolling over the mist-covered hills like a warning. Inside the ancient stone walls, Brother Tenzin knelt before the altar, his hands steady even as his thoughts trembled. 1 year. Just one more year of silence, fasting, and devotion, and he would finally be free of the world. Free of temptation. Free of the life he'd left behind as the heir to the Li Empire. But fate had its own sense of irony. Far below, at the foot of the mountain, a black car pulled to a stop beside a wooden gate. The door opened, and a woman stepped out, heels clicking against gravel, the faint scent of vanilla and smoke trailing behind her. Her crimson coat fell open just enough to reveal a flash of sequins beneath, shimmering like sin itself under the dull morning sky. Her name was Mina, and she was here to destroy a monk. Remember 1 year, Mrs. Li's voice echoed in her mind as she stared up at the mountain path. Make him fall, make him come home. I'll pay for your brother's surgery, and triple it if he leaves before his vows are sealed. Mina had tried to walk away from the deal. She really had. But when the doctors said her brother wouldn't survive another month without treatment, morality became a luxury she couldn't afford. She took one last drag of her cigarette, crushed it under her heel, and whispered to herself, just 1 year. By the time she reached the monastery gates, her red coat was soaked with dew, and her hair clung to her neck. A monk stood by the entrance, tall, quiet, and unearthly calm, as if carved from the same stone that surrounded them. Tenzin's eyes met hers, dark, unreadable, and sharp enough to strip her lies bare. Visitors rarely came here. Women? Never. State your purpose, he said, his voice low, steady. Mina smiled, soft and dangerous. I'm here to find peace, brother. He frowned. Peace doesn't come in red heels. She laughed. Maybe I like to sin while I seek salvation. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. With a reluctant nod, he turned, gesturing for her to follow. The monastery loomed above them like a living fortress, cold stone, flickering candles, the scent of incense heavy in the air. She watched his back as he walked ahead, his simple robe clinging to his frame with quiet strength. There was something tragic about him, something she wasn't supposed to notice, something she couldn't unsee. That night, as the monks recited prayers, Mina sat alone in the guest quarters, tracing her fingers over the rosary left on the table. She wasn't used to silence. It unnerved her more than noise. The city was loud, sin was louder. But here, even her thoughts seemed too heavy. When Tenzin came to check on her later, the candlelight threw shadows across his face. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. She tilted her head, her voice low and teasing. Afraid I'll tempt you, brother? His silence was her answer. Mina smiled, a small, broken smile that didn't reach her eyes. Good. Because I already have a reason to make you fall. He turned to leave, but her words lingered like smoke in the air. And as he closed the door behind him, he realized, for the first time in years, his heart had skipped a beat. Outside, the wind carried the sound of distant bells. Inside, temptation had found its way through the gates. And neither of them would leave untouched. The rain had begun before dawn, soft at first, then steady, a rhythm against the monastery roof that filled the silence Mina hated most. She sat by the small wooden window, chin resting on her knees, watching droplets slide down the glass like beads of regret. It had been 3 days since she arrived. 3 long, unbearable days of stillness. No music, no laughter, no escape. The monks barely spoke to her, and Brother Tenzin avoided her as if she were fire. He gave her chores, guidance, prayers, but never warmth. Yet the more he withdrew, the more she wanted to draw him out. Not just because she was paid to, because he was impossible to ignore. That morning, she caught sight of him in the courtyard, sweeping the stones after the rain. The gray of his robe blended into the mist, but his presence pulled her in like gravity. He didn't look like any monk she'd ever imagined. His movements were measured, disciplined, but there was power in them, coiled and restrained, as though he were built for battle, not prayer. She stepped out barefoot, her red coat gone, a simple white dress brushing her knees. "You know," she called out softly, "you could at least pretend I'm not invisible." Tenzin didn't turn. "You're not invisible. You're distracting." Her lips curved. "I'll take that as progress." He paused, gripping the broom a little too tightly. "This is not a place for games." Mina walked closer, the wet stone cool under her feet. "Who said I'm playing?" Her voice was light, teasing, but inside, her heart beat too fast. Every time he looked at her, she felt exposed. He wasn't like the men in the clubs, hungry, reckless, easy to control. His gaze stripped her in ways no hands ever could. Later that day, she found him in the temple garden, kneeling before a statue of the Buddha, eyes closed in silent meditation. The air was thick with incense and rain, and for a moment, she almost forgot why she was there. She sat a few feet away, imitating his posture, hands resting on her knees. "So, how long do you sit like that before enlightenment kicks in?" His eyes opened slowly. "It's not about enlightenment. It's about surrender." She arched a brow. "I don't surrender easily." He smiled faintly, just once, just enough for her to notice. "That much is clear." "Then teach me," she said quietly. "Teach me how to surrender." Tenzin looked at her for a long moment. "You don't come here to learn, Mina. You came to forget something." Her throat tightened. He didn't know how right he was. She laughed to cover it. "Maybe both." That night, Mina dreamed of her brother, thin, pale, smiling through the hospital window. "You're doing this for me, right, Jia?" His voice echoed in her head, and guilt curled in her stomach like smoke. When she woke, she heard movement outside her door. She opened it to find Tenzin lighting lanterns along the corridor. "You don't sleep?" she whispered. "Peace doesn't rest," he murmured. Mina stepped closer, the light flickering between them. "Tell me something," she said softly. "What did you give up when you came here?" His hand froze midair. "Everything," he said. "And everyone." She hesitated, then asked, "Even love?" His gaze flicked to hers, sharp and dangerous. "Especially love." Mina took one slow step closer until their breaths mingled, the scent of sandalwood and rain between them. "Then you haven't really surrendered," she whispered. The lantern flame quivered. So did his composure. "Mina," he said her name like a warning and a prayer. She smiled sadly. "Don't worry, brother. I'm just learning." When he left, she leaned against the door, her chest rising and falling too fast. She had meant to tempt him. Instead, she'd awakened something in herself she couldn't name. And in the silent corridors of the monastery, two hearts began to tremble under the same vow, one of duty and one of desire. The monastery bells echoed through the mountain air, deep and solemn, their sound rolling like thunder between stone walls. Mina froze mid-step, her bucket of water trembling in her hands. Every note of that bell seemed to vibrate inside her chest. Somewhere beyond those walls, Tenzin Liu, the man she was sent to destroy, was praying. And she hated how much she wanted to hear his voice instead. It had been 6 days since she last saw him. 6 long days of silence. He'd disappeared into meditation, the head monk said, preparing his soul. But she knew it wasn't that simple. She'd seen the way his hands trembled when she stood too close. The way his eyes lingered before he looked away. Something had cracked inside him, and she was the one who caused it. That afternoon, she carried rice bowls into the courtyard. The monks were already seated, silent still. Then she saw him. Tenzin sat at the far end, head bowed, robe clinging to his shoulders like shadows. He didn't look up when she passed. But she felt it, his attention, sharp as a blade beneath the stillness. She set a bowl in front of him. "You're going to starve if you keep pretending I don't exist," she whispered. He said nothing. But when she turned to leave, his voice finally broke the silence. "You shouldn't be here." Mina froze. The sound of his voice, deep, calm, and painfully restrained, washed through her like heat. She turned slowly. "You say that, but you don't mean it." He stood, the wooden bench creaking beneath him. "I do." "Then why are you trembling?" The faintest flicker crossed his face. Anger, desire, confusion. She couldn't tell. He stepped closer. You came here for the wrong reasons. Maybe, she whispered, her heart thudding, but I think I'm staying for the right ones. That night, a storm swept through the mountain. Wind howled between the prayer flags. Lightning flashed across the sky. Mina sat awake, restless, staring at the small candle flickering beside her bed. A knock broke through the thunder. She opened the door, and there he was. Tenzin stood soaked to the bone, rain dripping from his hair, his robe clinging to his chest. His eyes burned, not with peace, but with something far more dangerous. You shouldn't be here, she said softly. He took a slow breath. I tried to pray it away. I tried to forget you. She didn't move. And I can't. He stepped closer, the rain still glistening on his skin. She felt his breath, warm against her lips. His hand lifted, trembling, stopping just short of her cheek. This is wrong, he whispered. Then stop, she murmured. He didn't. The air between them throbbed with everything unspoken, her mission, his vow, the lies, the longing. For a heartbeat, the world outside disappeared, and there was only the sound of rain and the pulse of two hearts breaking their own rules. But before he could touch her, the monastery bell rang again, 3 sharp tones. Midnight prayers. He stepped back, guilt twisting his face. I have to go. Tenzin. He turned away, his voice low and broken. If I stay, I'll never be a monk. And then he was gone, swallowed by rain and silence. When the door closed, Mina fell to her knees, clutching her chest. The ache there was more than guilt, it was love. And love, she realized, was the one vow neither of them would ever keep. The next morning, sunlight struggled to pierce the clouds over Mount Wutai. The storm had left the monastery drenched and quiet, every stone dripping with the weight of what had passed in the night. Mina hadn't slept. Her lips still tingled from the nearness of him. Her heart still ached with what didn't happen, and what almost did. She kept her distance all day, sweeping the temple steps, pretending not to notice the whispers. Something in the air had shifted. The monks looked at Tenzin differently now. So did the abbot. By evening, the rumors had reached someone far worse. The storm hadn't touched the city. Here, the sky was polished silver above towers of glass. Inside one of them, Madame Liu, Tenzin's mother, stood by the window, scrolling through photos her informant had sent. Mina, barefoot, laughing in the monastery courtyard. Tenzin, beside her, eyes soft in a way they never had been before. The older woman's lips pressed into a thin line. So, she murmured, the stripper grows a conscience. She turned to her assistant. Tell her the deal is off. Bring her home. The man hesitated. Madam, she's deep in the mountain. It may take days. Then leave now. Her voice sharpened like glass. Before she ruins my son. Mount Wutai, 2 nights later. Mina was in the temple garden again, lighting incense, when she heard footsteps behind her. Tenzin. She didn't turn. You came. I couldn't stay away, he admitted. His tone carried something new, defiance, maybe even peace. Did you pray for me? She teased lightly. I tried. And I think I sinned instead. She laughed softly, but it broke halfway. You make that sound like a confession. Maybe it is. He moved closer. Mina, whatever this is, it's tearing me apart. But so does the thought of never seeing you again. Her hand trembled as she set down the incense. Then don't stop. He cupped her face gently. For the first time, he didn't fight it. His thumb brushed a tear from her cheek, his breath warm against her forehead. But before the moment could deepen, a voice called from the temple gate. Mina Han. They froze. A man in a black coat stood there, holding a letter sealed with the Liu family crest. Her blood ran cold. Inside her small room, she tore open the envelope with shaking hands. It was all there, her original contract, the payment records, the instructions from Madame Liu. Seduce him. Break his vow. Bring him home. And beneath that, a single line in elegant handwriting. Your services are no longer required. Leave the mountain before he finds out. She stared at it until the letters blurred. The room spun. Mina? Tenzin's voice came from behind her. She turned slowly, hiding the papers behind her back. What was that? He asked softly. Nothing. But Tenzin wasn't a fool. He saw the fear in her eyes. He reached for the envelope, and when she didn't move, he took it gently from her hand. His gaze skimmed the words and froze. The silence that followed was the kind that crushed. So it's true, he said finally, voice hollow. You were sent. She shook her head, tears spilling now. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. He held up a hand. Don't lie to me again. I didn't lie about how I feel, she whispered. He stepped back, as if burned. You lied about everything else. The rain started again, soft, relentless. Tenzin turned toward the door. Go, Mina. Before I forget what peace feels like. She reached out, grabbing his sleeve. Please, just let me explain. He tore free. His voice cracked. I was willing to give up my vows for you. My soul. Her knees gave out, and she fell, crying into the cold stone. I never wanted to hurt you, Tenzin. I just wanted to survive. He looked at her one last time, his expression breaking for a heartbeat before he hardened again. Then survive, he said quietly. Just not with me. And with that, the monk who once vowed to silence left the woman who had taught him how to speak. Outside, the storm deepened. Inside, the candle in her room went out. But what neither of them knew was that Madame Liu was already on her way to the mountain. And she wasn't coming alone. The morning the Liu convoy reached the mountain, fog curled over the temple roofs, like ghosts refusing to leave. Mina stood at the edge of the courtyard, a small bag in her hand, eyes hollow from nights without sleep. She'd decided to go. Not because she wanted to, but because she thought it would save him. Then she saw the black cars, winding up the path. Madame Liu stepped out first, wrapped in fur and determination, her heels clicking on wet stone. Behind her came two men in suits, and someone Mina didn't expect.
A boy.
Thin, frail, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. Jia. Mina's breath caught. Jinhai. She dropped her bag and ran to him. He stumbled into her arms, laughing alive. I'm okay, he whispered, clutching her tightly. The doctors said I'm cured. The surgery worked. We got the money, you did it. She held him, shaking. I thought. He pulled back and smiled up at her. You don't have to dance anymore. Madame Liu's voice cut through the air. Touching reunion. Mina turned, shielding her brother. What are you doing here? To stop my son from throwing away everything for you. Tenzin appeared then, stepping from the main hall, his robe dark with rain, his eyes unreadable. Mother, he said quietly. She faced him. You were meant to take your vows today. Instead, I find you tangled in lies and shame. It's not shame, he said. It's truth. Madame Liu's gaze flicked to Mina. Truth? She was bought. I paid her to seduce you. I know, he said. The words hung heavy between them. Mina flinched. You knew, she whispered. He nodded. Last night. And I prayed for strength not to hate you. Her heart cracked. Did you find it? He took a step closer.
No.
I found something stronger. Madame Liu's voice trembled now, anger and desperation fighting in her throat. She is nothing, Tenzin. You were born to lead, to restore what your father built. He looked at her, calm, sad, unshaken. I was born to love. And for the first time, I understand what that means. The wind howled through the courtyard. Mina's brother clung to her hand. Madame Liu's eyes shimmered, though she tried to hide it. You would give up your vows, she whispered, for a woman who deceived you? Tenzin's voice softened. She gave her soul for her brother.
You call that deception?
I call it devotion. Mina fell to her knees, tears spilling freely. I never wanted to ruin you. I just didn't know how to live any other way. He knelt beside her, cupping her face gently. Then live differently. With me. For the first time, Madame Liu faltered. She looked at the two of them, the fallen monk and the broken girl, and saw not sin, but salvation. Her lips trembled. Tenzin, he stood helping Mina to her feet. Mother, forgiveness isn't weakness. It's peace. The older woman's shoulders sagged. Slowly, she nodded. If peace is what you've found, then who am I to steal it? The rain eased, sunlight spilling through the clouds like grace itself. Mina turned to her brother, brushing tears from his cheeks. We're going home, Jinhai. Tenzin smiled faintly.
No.
You're coming with me. She blinked. With you? He nodded. The temple will survive without me. But my soul won't survive without you. Months later, under cherry trees blooming pink against the monastery walls, Tenzin and Mina were married in a quiet ceremony. He still prayed every morning. She still danced sometimes, barefoot in the garden, laughter soft as wind. And every time the bells rang, they both remembered the night the silence finally broke. Because some vows, they learned, are meant not to bind, but to set the heart free. The mountain was quiet again, not with the silence of restraint, but the kind born of calm hearts and open laughter. A breeze moved through the monastery garden, carrying the scent of tea leaves, blossoms, and the faint ring of temple bells. Mina knelt beside a small boy in the grass, helping him fold a paper crane. His fingers were clumsy, his concentration fierce. Like this, Mama? He asked, eyes bright as morning. She smiled. Perfect, little one. The boy beamed, holding up the crooked crane. Papa says if we make 1,000, all our wishes come true. He would say that, she said softly, glancing toward the veranda. Tenzin stood there, dressed simply in white, sleeves rolled up, pouring tea for Madame Liu and Jinhai. His hair had grown longer, his face calmer. There was still the serenity of a monk in him, but now it was touched by joy. Madame Liu watched Mina and the boy with quiet fondness. There were still days when her pride ached, but those days grew fewer. She'd found something she'd never expected, forgiveness, for herself, for her son, for the girl she once thought unworthy. You've changed him, she said softly. Mina, hearing from across the courtyard, smiled.
No.
We changed each other. Later, as the sun sank behind the mountain, Tenzin found her by the lotus pond. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. He has your stubbornness, he murmured. And your eyes, she teased. He kissed the top of her head, lingering. Do you ever regret it? Leaving everything. She turned in his arms, brushing a hand along his jaw. Only that I didn't find you sooner. The evening bell sounded, echoing through the valley, a sound once heavy with duty, now light with peace. Mina closed her eyes. That sound used to frighten me. Why? Because it meant the world would go silent again. She smiled faintly. But now that sounds like home. Tenzin took her hand, guiding it to his heart. That's because it is. Their son came running across the garden, shouting, Papa.
Mama.
The stars are out. Mina laughed, scooping him into her arms as Tenzin looked up. Above them, the sky stretched wide and endless, just like the life they had built from ruin and grace. And somewhere in that quiet mountain, love, once forbidden, once fragile, had finally found its vow.